Based on the failed June 28, 2005 mission Operation Red Wings, 4 members of SEAL Team 10 were tasked with a mission to capture or kill notorious Taliban leader Ahmed Shad. This is my review of Lone Survivor. So there were a couple of things that I knew about Lone Survivor before I went to see it with my dad. And one of those things was that the movie was based off a book that was written by the only living person of this mission called Operation Red Wings. And that's the other thing, that this person was the only living survivor, hence the title of the movie and the book, Lone Survivor. So I was interested in seeing the movie, but the thing that worried me was the director that was picked to direct this movie, which I'll get to in a second. But I've got to tell you guys that Lone Survivor is a really good war movie, in my opinion. The good points. So I think the major good point about Lone Survivor was the editing and pacing of this movie. Yeah, like, there's a lot of other stuff, which I'll get to in a second, but I thought that the editing and pacing were the best part of it, because the movie is 2 hours, and it didn't really feel like a 2-hour movie because the movie went by extremely fast. Like, it just zipped along just like that. Yeah, so I thought the editing was done well, especially during the action scenes, like the battle scenes. I thought that they were done very well, and I thought that the pacing added tension to some of the scenes because of like how fast they were going, and you didn't know what was going to happen next. The second best thing about Lone Survivor was the directing from Peter Berg. Like I said a minute ago, I was a little bit worried about Lone Survivor because of who the studio picked to be the director. Yeah, Peter Berg last year directed Battleship, and in my opinion, Battleship wasn't that good. But I've seen 2 of his other movies, which were The Rundown, which I thought was good, and The Kingdom, which I thought was great, in my opinion. So I was going into the movie thinking just give Peter Berg a chance, and it paid off because I thought that this is Peter Berg's best film. I thought that the dramatic scenes were directed very well, but I think that his action scenes were the best part of his directing, because really the battle scenes in this movie are sort of close quarters, and it sort of felt claustrophobic like during the battle scenes because the Taliban were like coming in on these like 4 Navy SEALs, and you sort of felt the tension and the pressure from like the Taliban like coming closer and closer and everything, and them like hunting down these Navy SEALs. And that's the other thing that I liked about this movie, was the tension from Peter Berg's directing, because he sort of didn't know what was going to happen next, like I said, with the editing, and Peter Berg just added to that like unknown certainty of what was going to happen. I thought that the acting was really well done, from Mark Wahlberg, Taylor Kitsch, Emile Hirsch, Ben Foster, Eric Bana, and Alexander Ludwig as well. And for those of you that don't know who Alexander Ludwig is, he's the person that played Kato in Hunger Games, and when I saw him in the movie I was like, oh, I didn't know you were in this movie. But he did a really good job acting, even though he was in there just for 15 minutes. The writing was another good thing about this movie, and the movie is written by Peter Berg as well. And Peter Berg did a good job of like telling the audience like all the things about this mission, like all the code names, the mission objective, and some military terms as well that like the general audience may not know. Like, for example, in the movie, like one of the supporting characters says QRF, and I know what a QRF is because I know some military jargon, but for the audience that doesn't know military jargon, they may like ask themselves like, what's a QRF? And on the screen, Peter Berg did a good job of like showing like a 2-second scene of like the what QRF is by like showing the full abbreviation, which was Quick Reaction Force. And I think that's good just to tell the audience like what a QRF is and what these other military jargon words are. The final thing I'll say about Lone Survivor, the good points anyway, is that the makeup is extremely good, I thought. And this isn't spoiling anything since this is seen in the trailer, but the Navy SEALs are like trapped like between a rock and a hard place because like the Taliban are in front of them and behind them is this like sort of like downward slope and like sort of a cliff, and they have to decide just to battle the Taliban where they are right now or to like jump off and go down this slope, and they decide to go down the slope, and man, the rolling down the slope scene was like really painful to watch because like you see like all the places where the Navy SEALs hit, and it's just brutal to watch, and then just to see like what they look like after that is just brutal to watch as well because it's like they have bruises, scrapes, cuts over the faces, and their faces getting swollen up and everything, and it's like, oh my god, the bad points. So the only thing I didn't like about Lone Survivor was the character development with the characters, and I thought that the film was written well, but that's the only thing that Peter Berg sort of didn't like go on a little bit. And I'm sure in the book that the person that the Navy SEAL that survived like goes into the lives of the people that died and everything, but for some reason Peter Berg didn't like really go into much detail. Like Peter Berg does like tell us like if they have any wives, girlfriends, and what else is going on with their lives, but you like when they die, you sort of forget about the people that die, and you only focus on the person that's living. And I just think that's a little bit bad because you should be sort of thinking about the people that died, but the focus is on the person that's living. And it should be focused on a person that's living, but I think you should also have a little bit of like thought after the movie about like the people that died. Peter Berg does do that by showing the actual photographs of the actual people, but it's like after a day of watching the movie, it's like you sort of forget about the people that died in the movie. So like I said, I saw this movie with my dad, and my dad gives this a 3.5 out of 4 stars, while I give it the same score, a 3.5 out of 4 stars. I think it's a good movie, and you should definitely see it. I think it's worth the money, in my opinion. And the movie has great dramatic scenes, great action scenes for sure. Like some of the best action scenes of the year, I think. But the only thing I didn't like about the movie was the character development and how it wasn't like really played out in the movie, and how we didn't really know some of these characters, even though we got the general basics of who these people were. But other than that, guys, that's it.